Good morning, everyone. Lucy Collingridge, Young Farming.
Good.
If you could give a piece of advice to, say, most of our young farming champions are probably in their 20s, I'd say. Pretty big age span there. Very dynamic time in your life. There is so much happening. So pick an age. What piece of advice would you give them, I guess, in agriculture and not agriculture, as like general life plus agriculture? Like, do you have any hot tips for us other than stay curious longer?
Well, the first thing to know is that if you're in your 20s, your brain has only just finished forming. I mean, honestly, your brain is a hot mess through to about 24, 25. It's still trying to figure out what your brain is. I mean, it kind of forms, and then you hit teenagers years and it kind of melts again, and then it reforms. And so the first is to go, look, if you don't know what you're doing, it's because partly just your brain chemistry is like your brain's only just got its act together. So you're fine with that. The second thing that my bias on this, and it's just a one person's opinion here, but I I mean, honestly, I spent my 20s not knowing what the hell was going on. I mean, I still mostly don't know what the hell's going on, but certainly in my 20s, I was like, it is a time for exploring because you can start at zero in your 30s and build a really successful life. And it it feels that there's this constant pressure to have your act together. And I just think that's a really unreasonable thing to impose on people because most people in their 30s and 40s and 50s don't really have their act together. They just can fake it a bit better. To expect people in their 20s to have their act together, where if you're saying that lots of them are stepping into agriculture as an industry for the first time, it's like you're just in apprentice mode, and that's brilliant because you can be stupid. I mean, I am all for embracing the stupid because it's the stupid that opens up possibilities. And to kind of go, look, I can be naive and I can kind of go, why are we doing that like this? And there's like 80% of a chance that there's really good reasons why you're doing it like this, and there's 20% chance that there's nobody really knows why we're doing it like this. We've just done it like this for a long time. So I don't know if that's any useful at all, Lucy. I'm not terribly great at giving advice because as soon as you make it generic, it's largely useless. So the second piece of advice is never accept advice from old people like me.
Well, I like your first piece of advice. For me personally, where I am in my life at the moment, that hits home. So if you've said something that's impacted one person, you've done it.
I mean, I started my company, Box of Crayons, when I was 35 or 33 or something like that, in my early 30s. And I'm just, and I've completed that journey with Box of Crayons. Another CEO now runs that. I've moved on to starting a new company, and I'm starting again at 52. But from my 20s and early 30s were spent wandering around trying to figure out stuff and go, oh, that didn't work. Apparently, I'm not very good at that. Goat farming, no. Tractor driving, no. Working in an office for an insurance company, no. I mean, there's just a whole lot of things that I did which were like not, leaving law school, being sued by a law professor, so not a lawyer, no. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm like, I've successfully failed at.
Yeah. I think it was your website that I read. I can't remember exactly what it is, so I apologize ahead of time if I get it wrong. But failure basically leads to innovation.
I think
That
so.
nail on the head for me. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, I mean, there is one of the books I love is by a guy called Adam Grant, and it's called Give and Take. And it's a really useful, just a mantra for understanding how to show up in the world. He looked at a bunch of people and he said, look, there are there are three types of people in the world. There are the givers, there are the takers, and then there are kind of, I can't remember the language he uses, but it's kind of like you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back sort of thing. So kind of mutual exchange. And he looked at across all sorts of industries, and he kind of looked at what type of person was in the top 10% and what type of person was in the bottom 10%. So if you think of the people who are in the bottom 10% of most industries, you got givers and takers, and you scratch my back, I scratch your back. Which do you think are the ones that were consistently in the bottom 10%?
The takers.
Actually, it was the givers,
Ah,
because they kind of depleted themselves, and they're just, they're
yeah.
kind of like they got walked on by everybody, and everybody took
Yep.
advantage of them, and they ended up being martyrs to the cause, but actually
Yep.
not succeeding. So they were the people who succeeded least. Who do you think succeeded most? Who were the ones that consistently showed up in the top bit?
I'd say the mix.
Well, funnily enough, it was the givers again, but a different
Ah,
type of giver, because there's a way of giving where you don't deplete yourself. You don't give it all away, but you act from a spirit of generosity. And I mean, I'm not really a believer in karma as a kind of spiritual thing, but I am a believer in that you can build a reputation for generosity. And if you've got that kind of open heart, good stuff tends to show up.
yep.
Um, and so what Adam Grant did was kind of say, look, there are two types of givers. There are the ones that deplete themselves and end up abused and used by people. And there are the ones that know how to give and still look after themselves in the right way, and they're the ones that really tend to flourish.
Yep.
So there's a way of practicing generosity and kindness, which actually connects back to curiosity, because a generosity is when you choose to see the best in the other person. It's not just giving stuff away, it's also
Yep.
seeing the best in the other person.
Yep.
So if you go back to that conversation around, wool and sheep versus Australian consumer, what if everybody saw the best of each other and assumed positive intent? How would that shift the dynamic between those two different sectors that kind of rub up against each other, or might rub up against each other?
That would be massive. That would be a massive change. No,
Yeah.
there is a lot to think about, Michael, and what you've spoken about today. Like, we've had a pretty brief conversation. You've done a lot of the talking, which I appreciate because subject matter expert here. So thank you so much for your time, Michael.
Yeah,
I
my
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for your time as well.
Same. Thank you.